Now you have to set up the YouTube.
Yes.
Now you have to set up the YouTube.
Pode ir? Ok. Boa tarde, todas e todos. Muito obrigado, tanto para quem está aqui na sala, presencialmente, para quem está acompanhando no YouTube. Desculpem o pequeno atraso devido às questões técnicas, já foram sanadas, solucionadas, e eu sou o Fabiano e, junto com o Luiz Augusto, coordeno o ciclo de palestras do IESP para esse ano de 2026. É uma grande satisfação abrir o ciclo. O ciclo, nesse primeiro semestre, como sempre, é bastante rico, com bastante variedade. A gente conseguiu agendar com colegas do Brasil, de fora do Brasil, do Rio, fora do Rio. Vamos ter uma palestra online da Alice Chu, no dia 13 de abril. Já na sexta-feira agora temos o primeiro seminário. Nós também fazemos isso, né? Inserimos seminários de laboratórios no ciclo. E na sexta-feira teremos o seminário do OILC. Então já temos aqui uma atividade intensa. A inaugural foi na sexta-feira, uma excelente aula com o Catherine Seking. E hoje temos um prazer muito grande de receber o Ettore Recchi, da Sciences Po. Vai fazer a primeira palestra do ciclo, fora da aula inaugural, Global International Mobility Ginis. Mais sobre isso, Carlos Antônio vai falar, o Carlos Antônio vai apresentar o professor Ettore, e minha função aqui é dar início ao nosso ciclo. Então, muito obrigado, professor Ettore, e vamos ao trabalho, é isso?
Eu tenho que fazer uma frente?
É melhor porque aí o robozinho pega a gente.
Bom, eu vou falar rapidamente, porque já perdemos algum tempo aqui na organização tecnológica da palestra. Queria apenas dizer que o professor Ettore Recchi, como disse o Fabiano, professor de Sociologia na Sciences Po, fez pesquisa sobre diversos temas, mas com bastante mais intensidade sobre migração internacional, né? E também desigualdade, né? É um pesquisador reconhecido não só na Europa, mas em outras partes do mundo, na área de estratificação social. Ele também integra o Centro para o Estudo das Desigualdades Sociais, Centre pour Recherche sur Inégalité Sociale.
Há muito ano, Adalberto Cardoso, que está aqui, me invitou há 10 anos. Sim. Now I'm going to switch to English. I'm very sorry, my Portuguese is so bad, but I'm willing to learn and improve, and maybe one day my dream will come true of presenting at IESP in Portuguese. I'll work on it. So actually today I'm presenting a much more advanced version of something that I was only envisioning during my first presentation about 10 years ago in IESP, and it's work that comes from a research program on the global movement of people, which I've set up, not at Sciences Po actually, but at my secondary affiliation, which is the European University Institute. I'm part-time professor there. It's a graduate institute only for PhD students in Florence, Italy, funded by the European Union. And this research program is called the Global Mobilities Program. I'm working there with colleagues and collaborators, Tobias Grohmann, Luca Bernasconi, Emmanuel Deutschmann, and Andrea Favel, whom I want to acknowledge, are part of the authors of a paper that I circulated, which has been recently submitted to a journal. But I'm going to start from something a bit anecdotal and biographical. in 2018, I had just started this research program, and I went on vacation to Cuba. And it was an extremely hot day, and I sat on a cafe, let's call it a cafe, and the waiter was very talkative. And he sat with me, and we spoke for about half an hour about life in Cuba, life in France, whatever. At some point, there was silence at the end of our conversation, and he broke the silence by saying, "Cómo se siente in the world for being abroad?" And he felt this constraint of not having a chance, not having the opportunity to leave his country. So that was a little bit of an epiphany for me, because I had already started this program on global mobility, but I never really thought or felt the importance of the inequality of travel opportunities for people around the world. And I felt that modernity was kind of out of leaving behind some people. Modernity is mobility. That's something that geographers say, and I think sociologists can have a slightly different angle. Yes, modernity is mobility, but why? I have two competing theories, and this is still a little bit of a prologue, then I'll go to empirical data. A possible interpretation is Weberian. Mobility is so important to modernity because mobility is a way out, or a way of taming disenchantment, a way of fighting against our lack of certainty, and looking for plenitude, looking for an extension of one's life through geography, through the expansions of one's personal geography. I have a literary reference. I really love this novel. I don't know if anybody knows about this lady. She was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature a few years back. Olga Tokarczuk. I really recommend this book, Flights. And there is this quote: "Standing there on the embankment, staring into the current, I realized that a thing in motion will always be better than a thing at rest. Then that which is static will degenerate and decay, turn to ash, while that which is in motion is able to last for all eternity." So trying to find eternity through mobility. In the same book, there is another quote that speaks to another possible interpretation of why mobility is so central to modernity. And it's a Marxian take. It's not a Weberian take. We are in an age of alienation, and travel offers a way out, a way to escape alienation. Whoever travels without arriving, whoever wanders without settling, escapes the system. Movement is a form of resistance. I'm not able to adjudicate between the Weberian reading and the Marxian reading, and also I don't have firm evidence about the subjective importance of traveling for the modern soul. But I have some patchy evidence, just still in the form of an introduction. Travel is a growing part of aspirational identities of people. How do I know? I have two pieces of evidence. Welcome. The first part comes from an unusual source. Where do people reveal their identity and what they want to be? Dating apps. OkCupid is a quite unique dating app, not so well known, it's not that famous like, say, Tinder, but it has a peculiarity, and the peculiarity is that this dating app requires people to write a self-presentation. And incidentally, some years ago, at the beginning of their operations, this dating app released a data set of a sample of the users with their self-presentations. And you can get it, you can download it from the internet. It's only people from California, okay, it's 2011, 2012, but still, if you search this self-presentation, I found out that in 38% of them, there is the word traveling, travel, or trip. And if there is also an educational gradient. As you go up education, because you have also information about their education, this proportion goes up. It's quite a lot, I mean, in a self-presentation. Another piece of evidence. Does anybody know about the Gallup Word Poll? You know what it is? Yeah. Gallup runs this yearly survey in 150, more or less, countries in the world. And they have, from time to time, not every year, this question. Ideally, if you have the opportunity, would you like to move permanently to another country? Now, this is the answers of different countries. Of course, in low-income countries, there is a higher proportion. 50% of people in the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Sierra Leone, they would like to leave the country for good. But that's not the surprise. The surprise is that also in middle upper income countries like Chile, Argentina, or Mexico, there is more than 30% of people who like to leave the country, who want to go out of the country forever. But even in high income countries, France, the UK, Germany, more than 20%, 25% would like to live elsewhere. There is an aspiration to elsewhere, which is quite telling. Outliers, China and India, but that's a footnote. I don't have the time, we can talk about it maybe in the discussion. Still prologue, now to hard facts. How much people move? There is an environmental scholar in Paris from the École Polytechnique, Aurélien Bigot, who has searched a lot of different sources and created this marvelous, to me, graph, which tracks the number of kilometers per day of average persons in France from the times of Napoleon. Now, you see that the average Frenchman and French woman for the whole 19th century usually covered about 5 kilometers per day. That's a yearly average. Then things start to change after the First World War, and they go up almost exponentially, then exponentially, for much of the 20th century, then they kind of level out, but not that much, they keep on increasing until our days. That ends in 2020. Why that? Cars, buses, and then from the 1960s and 70s, commercial flights. And now the average, which is the yearly average, so you should multiply 50 kilometers per day per 365 days, it's 10 times what it was 1 century ago. So this shows that ours is the age of mobility, how mobility is central to modernity in a geographical sense. My interest lies more in international mobility, actually, cross-border mobility. And here we have a similar graph starting from 1960, which tracks the growth of international mobility compared to migration and the growth of the world population. The number of migrants in the world has multiplied by a factor of 3.5 in 60 years. But the number of internationally mobile or international travels has multiplied by a factor of 21. So there is really a proliferation of travel which dwarfs the expansion of migration, which has been magnified in political discourse, but also in academic discourse. You have one of the best-selling books in migration studies, The Age of Migration. No, we are not in the age of migration. We are in the age of mobility. This means more travel for all? No. The answer is no. There is a lot of literature in political science and political theory showing inequalities in mobility rights. Access to passports, access to visas. I work on the cost of visas. The rights of people to get out of the country are highly unequal across regions of the world. But okay, this is an acquis, this is something that we know, but we don't know how much de facto there is inequality in the practice of international mobility of people. And that's where I'm heading with this talk. And this is the structure of the talk. I will speak briefly about the data set because I'm bringing to the table a new data set that was released a couple of weeks ago. It's now deposited on a repository called Zenodo. It's called Global Transnational Mobility Dataset 2.0. And you can download it and play with it. And I have 4 research questions. The first one is very descriptive. How did global mobility volumes develop between 1995 and 2022? What is the relationship between migration and non-migratory international mobility? How does global mobility, how is it structured in network terms across the planet? And fourth, and most important, how unequal is the distribution of mobility across the world? So 4 questions, and the 4 sections will be identified on top of my slides. A little bit about the data. I started this project in 2018. In 2019, I released and published also a paper using a preliminary version, which only explore 6 years and only did some marginal, let's say, adjustment to the data. I will not speak about that. There is a slightly similar data set created in 2023 by a bunch of Spanish economists, but they only work on 74 countries, mostly OECD countries and a few other countries, and they don't consider migration. Whereas the Global Transnational Mobility Dataset that contributed to create estimates human mobility between 243 countries for 27 years and combines migratory and non-migratory mobility. Okay, the basic unit of a data set is cross-border episodes. That is, any time that a human being goes from country A to country B and crosses a border, okay? So it's not individuals, it's episodes, it's events, which means that we don't know, we cannot know whether it's the same individuals or it's different individuals. This is not individual level data. Our cells in the data sets are corridors, that is diads, country A and country B, Brazil and France, Argentina and Botswana, whatever. We cover all possible combinations of countries in terms of corridors. And what we get in any cell is the number of times that a person, a human being, went from country A to country B in any given year. We distinguish between migrants according to the convention created by United Nations Population Division, that is people who stay at destination for more than 12 months and people who stay less. And we use 2 types of data, administrative data and transportation data. In principle, they should give the same numbers, the same figures. Administrative data are usually produced by the country of arrival. When people arrive, people are registered, and countries of arrival have an interest in knowing how many people get in. And they're required by a convention, United Nations Convention, to communicate these numbers in a rather detailed form to the United Nations World Tourism Organization. Transport data are created by the carriers. Unfortunately, these data are very detailed for commercial flights. They're not so detailed for land transportation or for water transportation. That's nice, thank you. The intuition behind the data set is that if we get both type of data, administrative data, transport data, we can compare them and see if they match. We can substitute one for the other and so create a more coherent and more complete picture of the whole mobility landscape. So our basic ingredients come from the United Nations World Tourism Organization, which is an agency of the United Nations that collects detailed administrative data of entries into all UN countries, UN member states. We get data about migration flows from a data set about migration created and kept updated by this statistical demographer, Guy Abel, data set. And then we get air passenger data from a private company that sells this information. And fortunately, we got some funding and we bought this data from this company called Sabre. And for years 2010, 2022, and then we backcasted the data for the previous years using gravity models. I will spare you from this workflow how we combine the data. That's too much, but we can discuss it afterwards. And this is the coverage. Basically, the data set includes 1.2 billion cells for the 27 years. And the coverage is 79% of all possible combinations of all possible country diets, country corridors, travel corridors, in both periods. The only difference is that the older period, the earlier period, 1995-2009, as I said, we did backcasting of the flight data. There are the administrative data, and we compared the administrative data with the flight data for the following period, and we adjusted based on that using gravity model. Usually, most of the cells come from flight data, but the largest corridors are covered by administrative data. So administrative data are better when it comes to large corridors. Flight data are useful when you have small corridors, like, as I said, Argentina to Botswana. Okay, the Botswanian government is not that good at reporting the number of Argentinians coming in. Yes.
How can I be sure you're not double counting people, or double counting this?
No, we are using either one or the other. We don't put them together. No. We decide whether, if we have both, we decide what we want to use. We have a number of rules to do it. Okay, let's go to the results. So this is the starting descriptive point. How has global transnational mobility evolved over the period? Simple. It has exactly doubled. In 1995, there were 5.3 billion international travel in the world. In 2019, on the eve of the COVID-19 pandemic, there are 10.6. The COVID pandemic was a major breakdown in the series, but then in 2022, where our series starts, we're willing to expand it, but we still don't have it. Don't have the data. There was a steep recovery, and I'm pretty sure that we are back on track with the series by now. Second observation. This is divided by colors, and the colors are the different regions of the world. The lion's share of mobility takes place in Europe. Europe is really the magnet of global mobility. Why that?
Also including the travels within Europe.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a lot of...
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll go to these answers to yours. If we divide intra-regional from inter-regional you see how much the difference. Much of the action takes place within regions. 80% of international travel is within South America, within North America, within Europe, and especially within Europe. Within intra-European travel makes up 60% of the global volume of travel. But then the growth over the period, which is one of the major findings, has not been driven so much by Europe. It has been driven by Asia. This is the blue line. Mobility from Asia has shot up of more than 300% compared to 1995. These are Europe and Oceania and other parts of Asia. South America and North America are here. The increase has been, substantial, but not that spectacular. You see, it's about 130%. It's a 30% increase, no more than that. Oh, this works. Migration versus other types of mobility. Yeah, migratory movements on average make less than 1% of all travel. In Europe, it's less, it's about 1 every 1,000 travel is a newly moving migrant. So, on average, you can think that when you jump on an average airplane, I use this kind of image, there is only one migrant on board. All the others are people who are staying 1 weekend, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, but not staying for longer than 12 months. And this is interesting, I mean, also for its political implications to communicate. What are the densest and what are the densest corridors? The densest corridors, as I said, are in Europe, and particularly in continental Europe, revolving around Germany. This is a little bit of a surprise. We double-checked, triple-checked, but Germany and Austria in 1995, the Netherlands and Germany, the Netherlands and Germany, the Netherlands and Germany, Germany and Austria, Czechia and Austria, even relatively small countries, have incredible flows of people coming and going. This is really a free movement area, which is a feature of European Union that really affects everyday life of a lot of people. The US and Mexico, that is sometimes used as a sort of, icon of huge mobility, is not as large as the mobility between two small countries like Czechia and Austria. And also the border between Hong Kong and China used to be relatively dense in 2005, but it is no longer in the top 10 in the most recent years. And also, it's worth being mentioned that there is 11% of corridors that are practically empty. There are less than 100 travels per year, and these are improbable combinations like Samoa and Malta, or Cuba and Bhutan. That's a little bit of a fun fact. Okay, then let's look at the big picture in a network form. To do that, we use the community detection algorithm, which is a way of clustering geographical information, comparing actual flows to hypothetical flows between countries. I tell you already, there is not so much change over the 27 years. There's a lot of stability. But some changes, yes, they occur, and some of them also involve Latin America, and it's worth being looked at. So in 1995, we have 9 clusters. South American cluster, the hub Argentina. North American, the hub the US. Western Africa, Eastern Africa, China dominating the Asian network, a Middle Eastern, North African cluster, the violet one around Dubai, a Central Asia and part of Eastern Europe around Turkey, the continental European Germany, and then the UK and British Islands and Gibraltar, of course, as the Commonwealth, small Commonwealth cluster. How does it change? 2005, not many changes. 2015, if I manage, 2015.
No, to do it, yeah, you manage that. That's right, no, it's right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
2015, Latin America is now separated from North America. We just form one cluster around the US. You must tell me what happens there. I don't know. I'm just recording what the data show. But there is a merging of these two clusters, meaning that more people travel across the two parts of the continent than they used to be, and are more separated from the rest than they used to be. Also interesting is the fact that the UK cluster disappears in 2015, and it's exactly and is absorbed by the EU continental cluster, and that's exactly on the eve of Brexit. Just as Brexit was a reaction of the UK becoming too close to the rest of Europe. And then the most recent, 2022, the UK is back in the game at the center of a quite unusual cluster, including the Balkans and Greece. And then Malaysia has replaced China, but that's incidental because in 2022 China was still very close because of COVID and the Chinese could not travel abroad. There's a separate Nordic countries in Europe with around Sweden and Russia, Turkey as the hub of the Central Asia and former USSR countries. So I think I already told you about this key aspect of the shifting clusters. I want to go to the last part, and the last part is about the inequality part. For this part, the basic metric is an indicator that we call the outward mobility rate. The outward mobility rate is simply the number of outgoing travel from any country divided by the population size of that country. Okay? And we have a ranking of all countries in the world have a number, which is the number of travel divided by population. On top there is Luxembourg. 13 means that every Luxembourgeois goes abroad 13 times over the year. That's pretty straightforward. Luxembourg is a tiny country, it's a rich country, it's part of the European Union where there is free movement. They go out even for shopping out of the country. On the opposite end, you have North Korea. In North Korea, you have 6 travels abroad for 10,000 people. Nobody goes out of North Korea. It's like a sealed off country. And similarly, Congo, there's very few, one person every 1,000 go out of the country, went out of the country in 2022. So already this shows a huge difference between countries, partly explained by geography, partly explained by prosperity, partly explained by politics. But let's go Oh, I have a digression on Brazil because I have also another question to you. So the outward mobility rate for South American countries, as not all of them are there, but I selected a few. So this is Brazil, okay? It's 0.1, which means that there is one international travel every 10 person per year in Brazil. Is it much? Is it a lot? Or is it few? It's few. It's few. It's small compared, for instance, to Argentina. Argentina, this gray line increases. And Brazil is quite stable. There's a little increase after 2010, but not that much. Argentina has always been higher than Brazil, and it goes up to 5, 0.5, 0.6 in 2017. So there's a huge gulf with Brazil, and also a huge gulf with Peru. And I don't know, I have two hypotheses. One, it's a big country, but also China is a big country, and there's a lot of people that with prosperity have gone out, and we see that. Second, you speak Portuguese, and you don't have neighboring countries speaking Portuguese. But also the Chinese speak Chinese, and not many people in the world speak Chinese. So I still have a question mark, and maybe in the discussion you can tell me why so much of a difference with Argentina and Peru. These are the average of the outward mobility rates going from 0.22 in 1995 to 0.14 in 2019. This is migratory outward mobility rates, showing that on average there are 3 migrants every 1,000 residents in the world going out on a yearly basis. Okay. So the intuition is, I think everybody in the room is familiar with Gini coefficients, right? I mean, I don't need to explain Gini to this public. Ginis are usually employed by social scientists for income and wealth, but the parameter, the logic of a function is a function that measures all sorts of inequality whenever you have a distribution. And so we can apply it to international mobility as well. And we can rank these outward mobility rates from the lowest to the highest. That is from North Korea to Luxembourg, creating a cumulative curve, which is a Lorentz curve. And you see already that it's a rather unequal. Very unequal Lorentz curve. And then it comes the Gini, and we compare the mobility Gini, which I show you in the next slide. This is already the Lorentz curve for the mobility in 2019, but we compare it to the Gini for income using GDP per capita, and also to another Gini, the Gini for the visas. Do you know the Henley index? It's about the power of passports, and it measures how many countries a passport entitles to visit without a visa. And this company called Henley invented it some years ago, and it's a nice index. It shows the power of passports. So if you have a Japanese passport, you can go to 190 countries without a visa. If you have Singapore, 189, Germany and France, 185, and then you have Iraq and Afghanistan, 2 countries, 3 countries, something like that. So it shows the inequality of de jure, of the right of mobility, not de facto mobility. Basically, in the next slide, I do compare the international mobility Gini, the income Gini, and the visa Gini. And this is what comes out of it. these are the mobility genes. There are 3 versions depending on different specification. I can walk you through them if you're interested, but basically the message is the same. They range between 0.8 and 0.87, which is
Very high.
spectacular.
Extremely high.
Super high.
Yeah.
This is the income genes, much like Branko Milanovic created, and it's between 0.7, 65 and 0.7, it goes down. And these are the visa genes that stop in 2013, and they are between 0.4 and 0.5. Yeah, different versions, because one of the genes is the absolute mobility gene, one is per capita, and one is population weighted, so as to avoid that Luxembourg is as important as China in the calculation. But the message is the same. They are very, very high, and they slightly decline over time, but then during the COVID period, they went even further up. Is Pedro Souza in the room?
No.
No, okay. I read his article that you sent me, and I noticed that he used the growth incidence curves. That it's something that economists use when calculating changes in inequality. That's the famous Milanovic elephant. It's a growth incidence curve. That is, you anchor a distribution to the starting point. In this case, we anchor the distribution of incomes to 1995, and we see how changes in the distribution at the end point, in this case 2019, occur at different levels of the distribution. So just concentrate on the blue line, which is the growth of outward mobility rates at different parts of the income distribution in the world. You see here you have an increase of 300 and 400%, which is pretty high, but then in the middle of the distribution, more or less corresponding to where China is, you have an increase in mobility that is over 2,000%. It's absurd, it's incredible. Again, we triple check, but this is how it is. This is the increase of GDP per capita. This is a replica of the elephant, which is an elephant no more. It happened to be an elephant only in a given time frame, but even more recent work by Milanovic have abandoned the image of the elephant. But still, China experienced an incredible increase in income over this quarter of a century of over 500%, but the increase in mobility was even more marked than the increase in income over the period. And here it's an easier to understand, it's a graph that is easier to understand. We simply plot GDP per capita and mobility per capita, or mobility rates, and we create arrows where the base is 1995 and the top is 2019. Again, this is China. The increase in GDP $2,000 to $10,000, the mobility rate went to below 0.1 to 0.1 to 0.1. So there was an order of magnitude leap in mobility. This is India. And then there are a few countries where the increase in mobility has been higher than the increase in prosperity. This is Argentina. This is Australia. This is Nigeria. And then other countries where, in fact, there was more of an increase in GDP than an increase in mobility. This is the US. And I think that Brazil should be this one, where you have more of an increase in GDP than an increase in mobility. This is the last figure, last slide. This is a little bit esoteric to me, because it's a fixed effect regression, but it's not OLS or a logistic regression. It's a recentered inference function regression, which is something that advanced econometrics does these days. Basically, the outcome variable, dependent variable, is the global mobility Gini, which is an aggregate figure. But this type of regressions compute the impact of every unit of an independent variable on the dependent variable, how the independent variable changes the shape of the outcome. I only have the intuition. Don't ask me about the maths. It's the econometrician in my group that did that.
It's a quantile regression.
The logic is the same, but it's not a quantile regression.
It's related with the method.
It's related. Yeah, methodologically similar, conceptually similar to quantile regression. Yeah. Basically, what we wanted to check was whether it is more changes in GDP per capita or changes in the power of passports that affect the Gini of mobility. We have different specification here depending on country fit effect or year fixed effect of a accumulation of both. But what you see from comparing these two in the different specification is that GDP per capita, an increase in GDP per capita tends to reduce significantly the mobility Gini, whereas a change in the power of a passport doesn't. So inequality in mobility seems to be more related to economic development than to political restrictions. Once you empower people with economic prosperity, then you have demand for mobility, which in a sense is more important than government restrictions to mobility. That's our interpretation of these results. So I'm summarizing and concluding. This is really my last slide. We can discuss this.
Can you go back one?
Yeah.
You were saying that among richer countries, the inequality of mobility is lesser, is lower. And among the poorer countries, as you go up in the scale, you reduce the Gini, but reduce the Gini among those who are in the same level of GDP, right? So you are saying that among two poorer countries, there is more inequality in mobility. You can eventually have a very high mobility, mobile country and a very low mobile country. And among richer, probably everyone is very mobile.
Yeah, that's the way you're saying. Yeah, but it changes. But if you look at the paper, there's a separate table which I'm not presenting here, where we experimented on running regression only on the lowest half of the distribution. And actually there, changes in GDP have more of an effect on the Gini, which means that boosting GDP in the lower parts of the distribution, you reduce the Gini more. So that's where the action.
Yeah, I see.
You see?
It totally makes sense with this result.
Yeah.
Okay.
So main takeaways. Global mobility Ginis are extremely high. The world is very segregated geographically in the capacity of people to move out or not move out of the countries. This is an overlooked dimension of inequality, which is eventually larger than global income Ginis and global Ginis, depending on the power of passports. Second takeaway, there is a tight relationship between economic development and mobility and international mobility, which I read, we may want to discuss it as a generalized appetite for mobility, which brings me back to where I started from, this idea of mobility being an inbuilt aspiration of modern contemporary individuals across the board on a global scale. Now, one thing we may want to discuss is where are we going to? And there is a major political dilemma. This expansion, regardless of the Gini, the expansion of mobility globally and this general aspiration to international, to traveling basically, is pernicious for the environment. We know that 16% of the carbon footprint on this planet is due to transportation. Can we afford further expansion of this carbon footprint? Probably not. At the same time, should we curb or frustrate the aspiration of people like my Cuban waiter who never traveled in his life to go out of their bubble and their island and be equal to a person like you and me who has the opportunity to travel? So this is a real political dilemma. Research-wise, the next step is to look at the stratification of mobility within countries at the individual level. These are aggregate country-level data. I've done a little bit of research on France, Germany, and Italy. I published an article last year in Social Indicators Research showing that also in these high-income countries there is a huge stratification depending on income and depending on education. Even more than income, it's education that boosts international mobility. I would love to have data from other countries and play around with it, but that's next chapter. Thank you so much. Very eager to discuss this with you.
Deixa eu tirar uma coisa. Posso falar em português?
Sim.
Então você responde em inglês. Na dúvida, vocês não trabalharam nos modelos. You didn't work with train transportation, buses and stuff, right? Only airplanes. So this underestimates a lot what's happening in terms of mobility in Europe, for example, right? Because I don't know if most, but a lot of mobility in Europe occurs in trains, transporting hundreds of people. For instance, between France and the US and the UK, right? The Eurostar, 100 travels every day or a week. I don't know. In the United States, people travel a lot in buses. And from the US to Canada, from the US to Mexico, in the southern border, etc. So I think there's an underestimation there. Did you correct for this?
It's not as much as a problem as it seems, for one reason. For all the countries that you mentioned, we used administrative data. We didn't need flight data. The flight data serve to cover the improbable combinations, as they said. It's Ecuador, Tanzania, or Morocco, Vietnam, where you have not very good administrative data, and usually it's distant destinations. So for nearby, for high-income countries and for one more thing, we use flight data adjusted by distance. By comparing administrative data and flight data, we could established a factor of correction, which is basically a geographical factor of correction, by which we approximate the flight data to administrative data. For instance, we know that if we have flight data for two countries that share a land border, the flight data are usually 1/3 of administrative data. So we multiply by a factor of 3. I'm simplifying. It's slightly more complicated. We have gravity models, but it's much related to, we have conversion rates from flight data to administrative data. But whenever possible, we use administrative data. And for high-income countries, we have administrative data.
And then the administrative data is like data from the train companies, for example?
No, for governments.
Huh?
The governments are required by their agreement, by being members of the United Nations Agency for Tourism, to provide this agency that nobody knows. It's based in Madrid, by the way. But this agency every year publishes a report where they collect the data from the governments. And the governments, the statistical offices, actually the governments, not the statistical offices, the governments have to send yearly to the United Nations World Tourism Organization information of how many people enter from any other member state of the UN.
Okay.
And then there are some additional complications. For instance, they have to distinguish how many were visitors, how many were migrants, how many stayed in tourist establishments. But usually we use the visitor category and the migrant category.
So that includes buses and trains.
Yeah. So the flight data are kind of a supplementary source that we use where we don't have administrative data.
I don't know. I will collect questions, but I will ask the first.
Use your power first.
So,
What a bossy.
yeah, it's very bossy. And everyone does this here, so I'm sitting here too. So, no, I mean, besides this question of data that I think we could stay a long time here trying to discuss, I was thinking about the type of economic development also, not only the economic development. For example, I was thinking about China and Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Brazil has an economy that's it's very powerful, very internationalized, but mostly for commodities.
Yes. Yeah.
That does not require many people traveling around. I mean, it's just some people traveling around, some businessmen to sell tons and tons of, I don't know, soya beans or things like that. It's different than China, who is doing all this kind of small industry things. And like, for example, if you want to have in Brazil, many industries here has closed here to produce in China the same product and bring it to Brazil back. So, and this is around the world. So the kind of globalization is different from one country to the other. It's not only economic development, but the type of economic development. Maybe this could explain a bit.
This is a great comment, and really eye-opening comment. It's very important what you're saying, because it also resonates with something that we have been trying to communicate. Because the typical reaction, oh, but you're speaking about tourism, you're speaking about people who go on vacation. No, that's not only, I mean, yes, there is also vacation, there's also people, but there's a lot of middling, in the migration literature it's called middling migration, which is kind of, it's the digital nomads, it's the people, businessmen going to sell stuff or buy stuff. There is a lot that doesn't qualify as migration in the conventional sense, but has much to do with globalization in a larger sense.
Exactly.
And what you're saying resonates a lot with this, and I fully agree, and I never thought about it, but we should think about the sectorial composition
Exactly,
of the relationship
yeah.
between different countries.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I imagine lots of these are business people traveling to see a business.
Again, anecdotes, but I travel a lot between France and Italy, which is my country of origin. And whenever I take a plane from Paris to Italy, I can tell you that it's half full of Chinese.
Exactly.
But it's not Chinese tourists. It's
Exactly, yeah.
people doing business across the diaspora links of across the Chinese diaspora.
Yeah. They are doing. I mean, they are selling. Like pens. Not iron.
Yeah.
So one question.
No, I have a question.
Adão and Rogério and.
No, the question is, the idea of modernity is mobility is a good idea. But from what you showed, the mobility actually began in the 20th century, right? Before that, you had people traveling on foot, right? But then you have planes, then you have the spread of trucks and so on. And then you have like that exponential curve, right? So maybe it's not actually modernity, but urban society, urbanization, right? That cuts many links that people had with earth, with land, right? Urban society because the 19th century was modern, right? And people were traveling on foot. That's why maybe some precision. I don't know. Just thinking on
The industrialization more than
urbanization, industrialization, and then airplanes and trucks.
Yeah, in the American occupational structure, they say that more modern society is one that people move more.
Mm-hmm.
They don't live where they were born.
Yeah.
This is a classical.
Well, but even in your time, I found it occurs with the development of cities. So the idea has been around, has been chewed by sociology for a long time. No, but I buy this idea of urbanization. It's a mixture of different factors, right? It's technology, it's urbanization, it's the form of capital. Maybe it would be more correct to speak about late modernity or second modernity. Maybe they would be more correct. Yeah.
So we have Guilherme and Rogério also.
No, thank you very much, for this interesting presentation. So I have a question it's about the distinction of economic and political restrictions at your perspective. Actually, how can you analytically distinguish between economic and political and legal restrictions on international mobility? So, your findings suggest that economic restrictions are a much stronger factor than formal rights to global mobility. But could it be that, in practice, mobility rights and economic capacity tend to converge? For instance, and I talked about that with Adalberto, in Germany, the Green Party have recently criticized what they describe as an excessive use of low-cost flight by members of the working class to traveling to destination as Ibiza and Spain and so on. In this case, it seems that the regulatory interventions and the formal rights seem to target those groups whose mobility is associated to economic restrictions. And that's so my question, could this should suggest that political and legal restrictions often reflect the economic mechanisms of the society and then reinforcing the difficult mobility, economics and legal mobility as the same, a part of the same unit of the unequal problem in the society.
There's another question here, Rogério.
Okay, actually, so several minor points to raise. I was thinking about this idea of Carlos Antonio of trying to make the same kind of networks, but instead of people with products and different kind of commercial relationships, including services too. I think it's very easy to do that, and superimposing and seeing how they overlap can be informative, because it's actually kind of the same thing, right? The other stuff is, you did not include in your regressions the Gini coefficient of income. I saw the paper, I read the paper. You have the top 10 share of income within the country, and most of the time it has a positive effect on mobility, and the middle 40, but the actual Gini could be informative too. I was wondering why it was left aside, and I think it was on purpose, but I didn't know what justification. The GDP was used for as a proxy for economic welfare, but using Gini and GDP at the same time could be more informative about this welfare level, right? Because you can actually create this measure, the SEM measure, which is 1 minus Gini times GDP, or minus some income measure, which is a measure of welfare in the society. So you are kind of a discounting for inequality within the country. And it probably justifies why Brazil doesn't matter much, because it's very unequal within. More unequal than China, more unequal than other places. And I think it's not just the size of the country which matters. I saw in your regression that size matters, and the language, which doesn't matter according to your regressions too. So probably inequality within the country could answer some part of the questions. Another thing is that I was thinking about robustness checks. What would be the result if you exclude China and India from the heterogeneity analysis? What would be the results if you exclude the microstates and commuter-heavy countries like, I don't know, Luxembourg, for instance, because it's probably commuting, right? It's probably commuting. It's not migration or tourism in the same sense. So probably in a few states of the United States, you're going in and out Canada, and you are probably going in and out several other borders like this. So it's not controlled by size, probably, because it's a very different idea. Other thing is, I was thinking on the underreportment of migration too. I don't know how big is illegal migration, how well reported it is, because some people, they travel like they are just for vacation, but they stay, right? Several illegal migration.
I just published a paper on this.
So you have answers.
And there's a lot of Brazilians.
I was just making this joke with him because Brazilian got integrated in the Americas, right? And there's this specific city in Brazil that sends a lot of people to the United States, Governador Valadares. I was kidding. Oh, that point is Governador Valadares. But you know, people go. People go
for a visa to the US and are from Governador Valadares.
There's a portal, they don't need traveling. But anyway, the thing is, migration is probably underreported, and it is not equally distributed among countries. some countries, they export more illegal migrants to other countries than others. So ignoring this probably underreports some poor countries and middle income countries. It's not something that is equally distributed. That's it.
Thanks
So
a lot.
next question. I think so let's there is more.
Guillermo, I'm not sure I fully understand your question. The point is, you think that political restrictions to mobility is not independent from economic development. So it's poorer countries, yes, there is definitely, there is a little bit of endogeneity into it. So there is not much we can do about it, but recognize it. Maybe you're right, and just check how empirically the two correspond. That's something we could definitely do, and I take notes of this. Rogelio, fantastic idea. Yes, I think the netto structure of foreign direct investments or commodity trade, I think somebody has done it already. I think we could find it ready-made. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. And we should do that. And that's definitely something that could sparkle a lot of extra thoughts, maybe going in the same direction as Carlos' comment on what type of trade, international trade, goes hand in hand or not with human mobility. Yes, I'm puzzled. I'm pretty sure that we experimented with the Ginis in the regressions, and I don't remember why we dropped it. There was some technical issue with it. Maybe it was some collinearity, and that's why we resorted to another form. But I should double check with the regression master in the group, who is Tobias Groman, the economist. And but I'll ask him, and because what you say makes total sense, and it would also be easier to interpret, showing how much the domestic Gini affects the global Gini. The economic domestic Gini affects the global mobility Gini. A specification about commuting. What you say makes sense on paper, but in fact, the only mobile people that are not considered by default in the administrative data are commuters, because the only condition for being registered for the United Nations Water Organization is spending at least one night abroad. So commuters on paper are out of the picture. So those 13 travel of the Luxembourgeois abroad should exclude the daily travel to go, I don't know, buy oil or go to the German supermarket because it's cheaper than the supermarket in Luxembourg. They shouldn't be included. Having said this, I have my doubts about the reliability of these figures for neighboring countries with free movement. I really don't know how the German Ministry of Interior knows how many people from Luxembourg get into Germany on a yearly basis. They do it, they provide a number, and we trust that number. Maybe we should do some ethnographic work within the Ministry of Interior Germany. I'm saying this not by chance, because now I'm advertising a different paper of mine, speaking about Germany. It was totally by chance. Last year, with other colleagues, I published a paper on waiting time to get an appointment at German consulates in the world to get a visa. And we got this information by web scraping, and it was quite adventurous. But eventually we had some questions for the German Ministry of Interior, and I don't want to shame the German state or government, but they played with us, and I have to say, like a different type of in research. So we asked simply, okay, we found out that, I don't know, the consulate in Madagascar takes much longer than the consulate in South Africa to give an appointment to get a visa to Germany. We would like to know whether this depends on the number of personnel that you have in this. We asked for a number of personnel in the different, and they didn't reply. And there is a law in Germany, a transparency law, that whenever you pose a question to the government through an official channel, they should give you an answer. The answer could be also, we cannot disclose this information because this is national security. But they never answered to us. So after 1 month, they should reply within 1 month. We asked again, and then we asked again. And eventually, at the third time we asked, we said, we already answered you, which they never did. So don't think that there is full transparency in public administrations in Germany.
Brazil is more transparent than that. Here,
Brazil is more transparent than that?
we have a law like that that works.
Okay, good. But I was surprised because, I mean, in Europe, the cliche, the stereotype is that the Germans are efficient, compliant, and they respect the law totally. Not always the case.
Germany, yeah, is.
So what else? Irregular migrants. Yes, you're right, definitely. We rely on official migration figures. They're not that reliable, but still, as I showed, migration is only a tiny fraction of the total number. So, and irregular migrants are a fraction of the fraction. In these other papers, it looks like I'm advertising my papers. In the paper on overstayers, we found out, we estimated this gray number, how many people overstay their visa in the European Union. And our estimates vary between 150, we covered 4 years from 2019 to 2023. Forget about the COVID years, but 2019 we triangulated different sources and we had an estimate of 450,000 people, which in Europe, I mean, Europe is 500 million people. It's a minor thing. And if you look at the absolute values of mobility, these wouldn't change much the overall picture. That's
But you can't advertise your other papers. That's nice.
We play the cards we had, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do.
So, more questions or? Okay.
I would like to insist on Guilherme's that question because I thought the same in that way. Whether the GDP and the visa variables are very correlated in between. Because in some of the models that you take off the GDP variable, the visa variable gets significance effect.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, you control by the two, and that's okay. But whether there is a few poor countries that have free visa for rich countries. I mean, maybe it could be interesting to see, like in a robustness check for this interpretation, whether I mean, I don't know if there are I don't know this 5, 10, 15 countries that accept visa for poor countries. So just I don't know if you did this comparison.
No, we didn't. And yeah, maybe it's more in the middle of the distribution variance in terms visa access. Countries are more or less at the same level of development, but some are more liberal and better accepted than others, so they get larger number of other countries accepting their citizens. I don't know, comparing Brazil and Russia. I think Brazil has a higher number of visa-free destinations than Russia.
Yeah.
No, I'm just figuring it out, and it could be. But yes, this possible overlap and multicollinearity of visas and economic development should explore further. We'll do that.
But not the genie of visas, the issuing of visas.
Yeah, the number of visas. Yeah, the number of visas.
Oh, so it's the number of visa-free?
Yeah, the number of visa-free
I thought it was a
destinations.
dummy.
No, it's not a dummy.
Okay.
It's a number of. It's a continuous variable. It goes, as I said, from 2 to 3. If you Google Henley Passport Index, you see how it varies.
Okay, now understand.
But I don't know if Bahad. I don't know if Russia has less. I would suspect that Russia has much lower number of visa-free destinations than Brazilians. Maybe I'm wrong.
That makes sense now. I didn't.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we know that our passport is valuable in the market.
Our passport is valuable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of this.
No, to Europe we don't need visas to go.
Yeah.
No visas to go to Europe, for example.
Yeah.
So we need visas to North America, US, Mexico, and Canada.
Mexico, we need visas?
Yes. China, Russia.
Because of the United
Most
States.
of
Yeah,
African countries.
to Mexico because of the United States, probably, yeah.
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 Because of what?
Because of the United States, because
Oh, yeah.
one way of entering the US
Yeah.
is through Mexico, so it's probably an agreement between US
Yeah,
and Mexico. But for all other countries in Latin America,
What about Canada?
Yes.
Same thing.
same thing. We need also visa.
Yeah.
Then Russia, China, and some African countries. Not all of them, but some.
Yeah.
That's it.
Not for Japan, for example.
Well, African countries require visas as a form of retaliation.
Yeah, and
They
and
do
also
it
former-
just to reciprocate the hardship of entering into the West.
Yeah, Brazil has the same policy. So people from the United States, they need visas to come into.
Oh, really?
Brazil. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
because they require
Mhm.
Brazilians to have visas. So it's it's.
And Bolsonaro didn't try to abolish this?
Yes, right.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
Okay.
He
you see.
abolished that.
I think yes.
But now it's ranked.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bolsonaro did that. Yeah.
I would like to ask you about your future agendas. Assim, what are you planning to do in other papers? You said that you are working in this at least for 10 years. I don't know. You said that a previous version of.
I've done other things meanwhile.
Hard work.
I played tennis.
You traveled.
I traveled a lot. Yeah.
You've been to Cuba. Okay, but anyway, what is the agenda in terms of how it relates to other aspects of social certification? What are you planning to do in next work?
Yeah, I would like to have individual level data about, and I kind of created a conceptual and methodological tool that I call SpaceSet, which is a way of asking in surveys people's travel behavior. And I applied this concept to 3 surveys in France, Italy, and Germany. And now I have another round in Germany because this German panel kindly accepted to replicate what I did in 2018. So we're doing it again. And I would like to do the same in other countries, especially not high income country, Brazil could be one, and see the social certification of travel with individual level data.
But how are you planning to do that? With a survey or?
With a survey,
With a survey.
the survey data. Actually, there are travel surveys, and another way is to go check travel surveys that are not very popular, not very much used by social scientists, but they are done by either geographers, transportation geographers do that. So try and see if there is anything like that in other countries, and or run my own surveys to get this information.
And how do you intend to tackle the data limitations of administrative sources? And that's all very interesting, but somehow limited as well. Then I read that you try to correct for some underreport here and there. You use the regression-based technique for correcting some things. So probably you had a lot of work to make this data workable, so to speak. What are your plans to, improve data access, and this is the way of opening more paths to future research, isn't it?
I think we cannot do much more of what we did to improve this data set. We've really been working for quite a long time, and quite a number of econometric tools and double checking. And I don't think there are that many extra data that we could use on the basis of available. We thought about GPS-based information.
That's amazing.
Or web scraping. In the migration literature in the last 5 years, there has been a proliferation of studies using IPs of people. A few months back, a paper was published using Facebook data released by Facebook, an anonymized Facebook data on Facebook users, and you can see whether people tend to access mostly from the same country or from different countries.
It's very
interesting. And we use that for the overstayers paper. The results are not terribly different from official sources, incredibly. So the advantage of these, they can have what they call nowcasting. You have information about yesterday's migration data, not from the last census, right? But you're a slave to Facebook. Facebook released these because it was a way of advertising. They called it Meta for Good, as a way of proving their goodwill and the willingness to cooperate with researchers. But they made it, you cannot know about mobility. They only offered information about people had been staying for more than 12 months, I think, in the same location, or whether most of the, to be honest, I didn't use that data set. It was a collaborator of mine who used it, so I don't have first-hand knowledge of the data set. But she told me that what you have is an indicator of whether the person had the majority of accesses over 12 months in the same country or in a different country. And if it was in a different country, there was proof of having moved. But there was no way of getting information about the quantity of mobility over those 12 years. for a mobility study, I would have liked to know whether a person had been to, 15 countries, meanwhile, or 3 countries. No, that doesn't offer.
It's just if the person
Moved or
stay
not.
12 months
Exactly.
somewhere else.
Yeah. But yeah, this kind of digital trace data are the only possible breakthrough of what we did, I think, about international mobility.
But that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so, no more questions? Okay, great. So thank you so much.
Thanks to you. I'm here for the whole month of March, so I'd be happy to.
Yeah, no, I think Rogério is in, we are in the same group, research group. So we were thinking about one day, the 26th, isn't it?
He's organizing.
Yeah, the 26th of March.
Excellent.
If we could have
I'm your man.
a meeting of us, that would be great. Huh?
Yeah.
Also, if any PhD student or master student wants to see me.
Yeah, before, so
Yeah.
you get in touch and, but maybe they are mostly very, very shy.
They're not.
They're reserved.
Yeah. But I mean, on the 26th we have this.
Okay.
This gathering.
And I'm happy to know what you do and.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the idea is that
Share,
they present a little
yeah.
bit the research
Excellent.
and so that's good. And so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We don't know what's going on in between.
Just a second. I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, no.
Can you see the team's still there?
Yeah.